All right, so on that note, let me bring in our guests. Miss Oghogho Inneh is the Dynamic Country Director for Nexford University in Nigeria. She has over 14 years of experience solving business problems across several industries, including higher education, financial services, capital market, and oil and gas. Her expertise includes visioning, corporate strategy, metric setting, and program delivery. OG, otherwise known, served as the Director of Project Management Office of the Nigerian University of Technology and Management, where she led the project team to launch and grow the startup university for over 3.5 years. And we're very glad to have her in studio with us this evening to discuss education. So thank you so much, OG, for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
So I heard you rather I saw you with my side eye, just nodding when we're talking, right? The conversation is around higher learning, and we're speaking to employees, right? How do we get employees to bring out their ultimate best? But before we go to that level, I just wanted you to quickly pick on maybe a few challenges. Because somebody will look at this topic and say, I beg, it does not apply to me. But I know that there are so many gaps that we've seen in so many companies that some are smart enough now to realize that, no, this thing, we need to solve the problem, and this is the way to solve the problem, and they're contacting people like you to say, please, what courses do you have available to be able to train my people to get them better? Most schools are doing it now, especially most universities, right? They're doing it. They're creating short programs to ensure that they're able to bridge that gap. So, in your experience in the educational sector, what do you think those challenges are, in the educational sector that would require that after I have gotten a BSc or something, I need to still go back again and say, you know what, let me go and get some level of higher learning from an institution so that I get better at my job?
Thank you very much, Ua. When we start talking about challenges, I'm sure we can be here, for many hours. But let's just start with the structure through which these employees you're talking about, where they've come through, and that structure for the last decades, right? We're talking about a structure that has been fundamentally underfunded, and without funding, it means you cannot maintain the learning environment. Without funding, it means you cannot hire, the best faculty to deliver some of these learnings. In terms of the technology and the learning tools, right? So whether that be software to deliver certain technical training, again, funding. So fundamentally, funding has really held higher learning back, and it's been doing that for decades. So when somebody then comes through that structure, that it's limited in terms of who is teaching, in terms of the curricula, right? And its ability to have kept up with the changes that are going on in terms of tools, you can begin to understand how the gap is then created between who's come out of the university and what businesses who are moving 1,000,000 miles an hour and technology is changing every day. You can begin to see how that gap is then created, And that's just on the side of the supply, right? When we now look at organizations on their own end, that struggle to even adjust to the generational shift that we're seeing, right? So if your organization, at least for the larger ones, for the older ones, is set up to look after a different generation. So in terms of how you remunerate, right? In terms of what you think motivates a person, you just need to take people from two different generations, this current generation and the generation before, and what, the patience, what keeps them motivated, person from my generation might enjoy seeing something for long and seeing it through. And then there's someone from a different generation who, let's say, short, snappy, and so organizations even being prepared to make that shift, to adjust to the current, to the changes in terms of generation is also a challenge in terms of that mismatch.
Awesome. Jennifer? Your generation, you want to stay for the longer.
So someone like me, right? When it comes to learning, I like it very short and precise, right? And I realized that when it comes to harnessing my skills, I like hands-on experience, right? And I also know that, like you said, expenses, funding, when it comes to hands-on experience, it's a lot more expensive to do that for most companies. It also depends on the industry that you're working with. But then when you have a company, I mean, what would be your expert advice, right, for companies who are probably working with or who have employees like me who want hands-on experience? How do they navigate a situation like that?
There are several strategies to apply after you accept the reality, right, in terms of what's going on, in terms of the demographic in your organization, right? One of the key things you can start to do is structure your work in a way that is kind of project-based, because then that would appeal to somebody like you, for example, who you want to do things short and sweet. So you can, rather than having people just work on the same thing for a long period of time that may have been okay in the past, now you might need to structure work in a way that is kind of project-based, and so that you can start and finish, and then you've moved on to something else. So the excitement of knowing that, okay, I will soon finish this and I'm going to start something else keeps you motivated. So that's one thing that companies could do to keep a person like you's attention. And of course, like I mentioned before about remuneration, right? So this idea of rewards waiting till the end of the year, for a person like you, that may not apply. So the same thing that gets you to want to do things in short bursts, you also want the rewards in short bursts. So there might be a world where you can then adjust how you remunerate, right? So that thing you do and keep all the way to the end of the year, is there a way where you do this much more frequent performance reviews and let the rewards accompany short bursts as well? So that's those are some of the strategies that companies could apply.
So that makes sense, right? I mean, if you remember at the beginning of when it was brought in the topic, she had mentioned how smaller businesses are really, really at a disadvantage when it comes to training their employees, because some of these employees, after they are trained, a month or 2 months, they're gone, right? And people are very skeptical. What if I train? I mean, if you have just 5 employees, I train all 5 of them, and before the end of the year, 3 of them are gone. Right, but then we also know that it is important for you to train your employees. So how do people or how do companies find the balance? How do they find balance, right, between should I train or should I not train?
I think the jury is still out on that. So I think companies are still trying to answer that question. But while they are trying to answer the question, to Uwa's point, so if you don't train them and they stay, that's a much more expensive bet, right? So I don't think that any company has fully figured out how to ensure they don't leave. So I think for now it's a reality that all companies are living with, to say, I'm going to train and I'm going to lose some. But it's much more expensive that I don't train and then they stay in my business, right? So I think that's really the priority for companies at the moment, to say, how do I ensure that everyone that I do have while they're with me is creating value and definitely not destroying value, right?
Interesting.
Okay, so for me, I would like to look at it from like prioritization, right? So a lot of times in church, for instance, you will see people come up to give testimonies. Oh, they've been sending other people to training and they never sent me to training, and now it's finally my turn and they sent me to training. So in the workspace, there is always this, it's like a beef or something about, oh, why did they send you ahead of me for your training and stuff? So my question is, how do you handle prioritization of employers' needs? Who to send per
As a
time?
company, if
Exactly.
we're going to speak to a company now, who would you say should be other priority in terms of recommending who to go for the kind of like the courses you offer?
Okay. First of all, you're talking to a corporate strategist, so everything a person like me does comes from the heart of what is the strategy that we're pursuing, right? And we've talked about how you want to know, no matter what the company tells you their strategy is, go and look at their income statement, what they spend money on, that's their strategy. So when you have a strategy on how to realize your goals, the priorities will be clear, and your training will reflect that. Right? It's the only thing that makes sense. So your strategy will naturally prioritize those initiatives that are going to drive, the most growth or give you the most income or whatever other strategic objective that you have. So once that is the case, that dictates who gets trained. And when I say dictates who gets trained, it dictates who gets trained in the context of the skills that exist. I mean, you're not training for the sake of training. You are training because you've taken a strategy, you've looked at the resources you have, you've looked at the gaps, and you're simply using the training to close gaps or to continuously develop. So in this issue of training, it also depends. Is this a continuous development issue? Is this a gap that I have in my organization that I'm trying to close? So, so again, for me, strategy dictates your priorities.
So it's never really an emotional decision, like
It's,
a lot of people believe it
I
is.
do not think that any business leader makes that decision, at least not in the private sector, makes that decision on emotions. It is driven by business needs, strategic objectives, and yeah.
All right, so let's go on a very short break. We want to delve very quickly into this conversation. Stay with us, we'll be right back. I have a question. And we are discussing the issue around how employees can begin to hone the talents of the employers, right? How do you start to invest in the employer through higher learning? And we have with us OG. She's the country director, right, I believe, for Nexford University. And she's live with us in studio. Now, please, let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-4663. So I was going to say that, okay, so I want to go back to Nexford University. Let me mention their name. So I started the course. I've done the pre-something because I don't have a business background. I was supposed to start my MBA and I went on a pause. Online learning is not a joke. You know, sometimes when people hear online learning, they think that it's something that is just a walk in the park. But the programs you guys offer is quite intense. In fact, my sister just graduated. So she told me, and literally I tried to peek into what she's doing is completely nowhere near what I did. So I'm now wondering, even in the space of like a year, the speed at which everything is changing, right? It gives me some kind of peace that whatever it is that I'm learning, I know that it's going to be relevant for a very long time. So that's one hand. But you don't hear companies like Facebook telling you that they don't need degrees anymore, they don't need certifications anymore, right? A lot of companies are now focusing on soft skills and all of that, right? So for someone that offers those kinds of sophisticated kind of learning, right? How do you balance that? You know, I mean, from a strategist point of view, let me even go to your field very well. How do you balance it that, you know, some companies are saying they don't need degrees anymore, while some companies are just, you know, they're just indifferent. And the pace at which even the degrees that you learned maybe 2 years ago, if you go back to learn it again, completely far from what you did 2 years ago, there's just something changing. It's evergreen and it's on a fast pace. So how do you manage some of these, would I call them challenges or so that comes with learning as, you know, as whatever.
Time flies.
Yeah, as the time is moving. How do you balance that?
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned Nexford University. So for us, right, and one of our fundamental beliefs is the issue of that education is no longer that thing that is about stage of life. I'll do secondary school, I'll do uni, I'll graduate, I'll marry, I'll never go to school again, I will now retire. And that, you know,
I'll walk on that.
I will now retire. So we don't see learning like that anymore. In fact, half of the reason the experience with Nexford the way it is that we want you to relearn how to learn, right? And see learning as a lifelong journey, right? It's just not practical for it to be a start and stop issue. It's just a journey. So that's one thing on the learning part. It's both ways actually. So you as well, the student who is now a lifelong student, is the same mindset, right? So we, in terms of an institution like ours, our job is to continuously refresh that content. And sometimes it's not that the content has changed per se, it's the application of it, right? And it's bringing what
scenarios.
Exactly. It's bringing this thing that you've learned before and teaching you how to apply it in the scenarios that are coming up. So that's our job. But for you, the learner, it's having that mindset that learning is now a lifelong journey and intentionally saying, I'll be back. You know, I'll be back. It's just going to be another year, a couple of years, 3 years, 5 years, I'll be back. And then our job is to be waiting for you with those scenarios to teach you to apply it. So there's no one size fits all. And then in terms of companies as well, just like strategy, I mean, it's different. There are different organizations. Within public sectors, there are different types of public sector companies. Within private sector, different types. So different people are going to have different needs. There is no silver bullet on how to get people ready to work in. I mean, when you have conversations about with manufacturing companies and how they have to train their people, it's a completely different conversation to education and how they have to train their people. So it's just the reality.
So speaking to what I said around Facebook, right, as an example, do you see us gravitating to a kind of educational or higher learning structure where, so for instance, I'm in the media space, I really don't need certain kinds of knowledge, that universities like yours will begin to prefer tailored learning for people just specific to the needs of those people. Do you understand? Do you see that as a much more effective style of learning that will bring a lot more impact, based on the strategy that you talked about? Because if I really don't need a Jennifer, for instance, I don't need her in my organization, but I need a Sanzi. But I need to give Sanzi the right kind of media or maybe business media mindset
Training.
that will make sure that she's bringing value to my company. Do you get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So do you see us navigating the educational structure towards that level?
We are already there.
Oh,
so that
nice.
is at our university, that is our mindset. So that's why I had to tell you about that fundamental belief about lifelong learning. So what does that look like in real life is what you just described. So if we believe that it's lifelong learning, the only way to do that is to allow learning to be modular. Learn what you need per time. But again, just like with all transformations, all transitions, things just don't go sharply from one way to another, right? In today's world, there is still a need for structured learning, which is what we refer to as degrees and things like that. So when a Facebook says, I don't need degrees, perhaps there's context around it. What skills or what roles were you referring to that you don't need degrees for? I doubt you would allow your chief executive to say you don't need a degree or no kind of formal management training. It will be difficult because some skills and mindset and ways of thinking will be missing. So again, all of these things are all contextual, right? There will still be roles that require that kind of structured, there's with everything, there's benefits, there are pros and cons. And there will be all these roles that still require structured formal training because there's a benefit that comes with that. There is a method to learning from that. There is a method to thinking in that regard. And then there are going to be these other roles that you talked about where a formal structured degree is not necessary. But because we see learning as a lifelong journey, you will still require that modular approach where you're learning what you need per time, but over the course of a lifetime, they kind of stack up and then still become this larger body of knowledge that you have kind of over a lifetime, so.
Okay. So let's talk about ChatGPT and the fact that artificial intelligence is taking the world by storm, and a lot of people are getting to embrace ChatGPT because of the level of assistance it gives, right? So I would ask, do you consider that app a challenge to the structural courses that you offer in your institution? Because, for instance, if I'm able to get knowledge of ChatGPT, I can then operate it to handle almost everything. Right?
No, not really.
Okay, well, really. Let's hear you.
Not really. I mean, all of these tools, they're enablers, right? They don't always come and replace something else. Sometimes they help. They just make it more efficient. I doubt through ChatGPT you're going to learn how to perform certain surgeries. Now, you can learn the thing that enables you to build the robots to do the surgery, but there are just some things that require sometimes peer-to-peer learning, that require a structured way of delivering that knowledge, right? Because when you are interacting with that knowledge for the first time, it's new to you. So there's something that comes when we talk about this person is a seasoned faculty and all of that. It means that they have, over the years, this same content, delivered it to hundreds of people. They know how to get you to grasp the concept in a consistent way as well, right? I mean, we've talked about how dangerous people with half knowledge is. So that's what structured learning does. It makes sure that, okay, when we all leave this class, we all have relative the same understanding, and when we go out there into the world, we will apply it in a similar way. So I am not saying you cannot. Self-learning is here to stay. You know, people can learn a whole discipline on YouTube,
Right.
but you will find that even those people, they would, when they get the chance to get mentored by someone who is more experienced, they will tell you that, okay, I learned it, but that mentorship helped. That mentorship happens with your faculty sometimes. You just don't realize it's happening because they are filtering how you're learning that thing. They are pacing it, they are timing it, and you are building on top of it. You are sometimes practicalizing it after you've learned the theory and all of that. Those things, you know, sometimes we take it for granted. So yes, you're right, the knowledge is there. It's like Google, it's there, but it's the manner in which you take it in and whether you are a professional at sieving through all of that information and then capturing the knowledge in the best way possible without, you know, perverting it and then applying it wrong and things like that. So I don't see ChatGPT as a challenge. I think it's a very welcome tool. But it is just that. It's a tool.
An enabler.
It's an enabler. It's a tool to save us time.
Okay.
It's a tool to help us generate even better ideas. But once, you know, it's like, you know, when we joke in Nigeria about copying and, you know, even in
I was going to submit ChatGPT. That's zero. Like literally, you can't replace.
You can't replace thinking.
Yes.
You can't replace critical thinking. You can't replace application, and you can't replace. You know, ChatGPT won't just link itself straight into a scenario. To just give you facts. You know what it is. It's analyzing lots of data at incredible speed, so you can have it, but you will still have to apply it to your scenario. If not, that's where the gap is going to show. It's going to expose that.
So there is this other challenge I have with structural learning, which I mean, I guess it's a Nigerian thing because of like the system of education that we operate in Nigeria. It's kind of like, okay, let me do this and get the degree, and then just submit the degree to show that, okay, you need a degree, here is the degree. You know, so I'm not quite sure how to frame that question, but I was going to the relevance of degree. Yeah.
So I went through your website, right? Artificial intelligence, that's for the undergraduate degrees, business analytics, digital marketing, digital transformation, entrepreneurship, international business, product management, supply chain management, applied science and business. I looked at it and said, these are not the kind of courses where you could see for the regular universities, right? Is it possible that these things are really deliberate, they're intentional? Because again, they do product management, project management online. So people are deliberately looking for these kinds of courses, and the people that study these kind of courses are not the people that just want to pass, just get a certificate for certificate's sake. They already understand that the world is moving towards some of these discipline, and if I learn this, you know, now we learn with calculating the salary. We have looked at it and said, okay, do you know product managers, this is how much they earn.
STEM research, this is how much they earn.
Literally, so when I saw the courses, especially for the undergraduate ones that you offer, I said, these people are actually very... So is there a strategy to why these are the subject? Because these are the courses that naturally people will just go online to say they want to go and study. So now you're making it a degree. So that someone just comes out and immediately... So to Sanzi's question around certification, these are not the kind of courses that I just want to get a certificate, make I just read, make I pass, which is what we did when we were growing up, going to university, regular universities. So why is this? What strategy is behind this and why?
Okay, so we'll go back to the Nexford University mission, right, which is about that creating, you know, economic and social mobility for Nigerians, Africans, young people, you know, around the world. So if we are focused on creating that economic and social mobility, it means that whatever education we're delivering, it is important that that education immediately starts to earn, you know, income for the people that we're training. So for that to be the case, it means that we have to go into the workplace and we find out from them what are your problems, what are your gaps. And those programs you're seeing are structured around the gaps we found in industry. And then we design the programs accordingly, and then we invite, you know, young people to say, listen, are you after, you're looking, for you to be searching, you're clearly looking to develop yourself anyway. What we have now done is that should you have this interest, this passion, should you by yourself have even identified that companies are looking for this sort of skill set and these gaps exist, then what we have now done is really understood that gap and structured the learning in a way that from the day you graduate, that company can use you. That's our own. It's important to us. That's at the core of our strategy.
Right.
Right. So that's the way. That's why it's the way it is.
Direct impact on the.
It's
Yeah.
we don't exist for any other reason. We exist for that reason. We exist
Relevance.
for that reason. It's that we said, listen, the issue of access to high quality education is not something that is only for a small number of people. We're millions in Nigeria. We're millions across the continent. How do we make this education kind of accessible so that more people? So yes, education is a passport. It's a passport to move across the ladder. So, but that passport does not need to be some guarded, kind of ticket. So, our mission is to make that as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. So that's why we design the programs that way.
Right.
Jennifer,
So one thing that I just wanted to bring it back home a little bit, right, to the employee side of things. I know that sometimes in some organizations it's might be some form of maybe competition, right, where people are really trying their best to climb up the ladder, right, and for some people, you know that you're getting more promotions or you're assigned more projects to work on because you have vast knowledge, because you've gained more skills, you've had more experience. Now, how do employees position themselves to be picked, to go for trainings, to be picked, to be equipped by their organizations?
It's quite a simple answer.
a view.
Make yourself relevant. Make yourself relevant. Nobody sees someone that can create value and looks away. When there's work, the work is plenty.
Right.
So you need, if you can identify people, so if you can do the work and somehow your employers, your leadership cannot recognize it, it's on you. You've either not made sufficient sacrifices or you haven't demonstrated what you have. Or maybe you think you have it, because if you have it, even great leaders spot things in you that you don't even realize that you have. So really, it's about making yourself relevant. Anything that has to do with you progressing, it's on you. You have to do the work. You have to figure out what your strengths are. You have to figure out what the needs of your organization is. And you have to figure out, how do I make myself relevant to those needs, the needs of the organization.
I mean, it also even speaks to what Sanzi said. Because now, if you now follow strategy based on Sanzi's and the answer you gave to Sanzi, if you've already positioned yourself as somebody that is relevant to the economy, you'll be the first on the list for that training. But someone says, hi, good evening. I know Oji from her previous work at NUTM. My question for her today is, for some people who are self-employed, how is Nexford offering them relevant to them? How are your offers relevant
for people who are
self-employed like us?
So, at Nexford, we have different programs. Like I said, you don't cater to one. You have a whole portfolio of clients or customers, and they are all segmented. So they are the ones that an MBA was relevant to them. There are others that an undergraduate degree. Like I said, remember, we want people to get educated in a manner where they can start working today. So if employers today still require, remember, these are policies, years-old policies that says, oh, we only hire people with a degree. We can't solve that problem now. So what we need to do is arm you with a degree, give you the skills. So we solve two things in that process. We arm you with the skills that we know the companies want. And if we know that many companies still require a degree, we go and get accreditation to enable to be able to give you that degree. So we also do short courses, and which is why we have we do our best to kind of work with companies, right? And I know he's our
yes. For us that are like small companies aspiring to become big companies, right? Because I know that you do a lot. Because I remember that how I got to hear about you guys was from a friend of ours, Alero. She was then with Sterling and all of that. So I said I like this thing, it's interesting. And because I'm self-employed, the only course I could start was the MBA, right? And I know that the way the structure is, first of all, it's a monthly payment. It's quite flexible. So it's not something that is strenuous. And you did not only stop at that. There was a time you partnered with a telecom company to even give out data. So if data is your problem, there's data to be able to study the course. I mean, I saw all that package. So it just got me thinking that, I've been interested, with you guys for a long time, because I saw that this is like a breath of fresh air. This will give a bit of first of all, it gives flexibility. It gives also, it breaks down all that bureaucracy around education.
Yeah.
And the issue around getting an international certification, that you have to travel, the cost and all of those things. You guys kind of like, broke that down and gave people, and the fact that you came to Nigeria, because a lot of online courses that people do in Nigeria, they are not here. They don't have any presence here. They are actually there. You just do it and they send you your certification. But you guys actually saw that there's a lot of potential in Nigeria. I mean, in the African continent, you actually brought your machineries down to set up here. So it gave me that okay, yes, that we are going somewhere with you. So, but we had to say they're shouting in my ear. We have 1 minute. So, but really, maybe we'll bring you back because we don't know yet. We'll have to keep talking about this education matter. But in one word, if you had something to say to anybody today that is really thinking about studying, how would you tell the person to approach it?
Mindset, and see education as a lifelong journey.
Absolutely.
Just see it as a lifelong journey, and the also relevance, right? Do the work. Always try to assess your strengths against what you can see organizations want, and then come to people like us to arm you with it, and then you just hit the ground running.
Absolutely.
Right.
Fancy, quickly have a comment.
Okay, well, yes. Good evening, my dear beautiful sisters of What Are You Saying #ways. Higher learning. How can companies hone employees' talent? There is no too much talk about this. My dear beautiful sister Jennifer made mention of someone achieving more and having more experience within a short time than a long time. She also said that someone that has achieved experience in 1 year may be better than someone who has used 10 years. That I agree, but all the same, there is still a learning process. Your beautiful guest made mention of someone going for a training, and it is through that training the person closes gaps and develops themselves, and that is very true. This is from Daniel Ilo, Ways regular fan.
Daniel will summarize our
You're
conversation.
tired, like he'll make a perfect summary writer.
But thank you so much, Uji. I think you've become a friend of the house, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to have more conversations around this, because this is actually very relevant and important for people. So if you're a small company like us, she has a package for you people too. So just find where you fit in, and I'm sure they'll be able to work around your number of employees.